Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. Today's very special guest is Debbie Walsh, the very long-time director of the Center for American Women in Politics. They do such important and wonderful work. You will learn a lot about it. Debbie, thank you for taking the time to chat.
I'm so glad to be here, and I love the very long time, which is your other way of saying this old woman who's
No. Come on. We both have some gray here.
gotcha.
So I want to do a bit on your past, but I really want to spend time on all that you do. So you got your undergraduate degree at Binghamton and then started your journey at Rutgers. Got your master's in political science and public policy at Rutgers, and then started basically immediately afterwards at the Center for American Women in Politics, CAWP is what we will call it, CAWP. So you have now been there for more than 40 years. So let's just start with what is CAWP and why should anyone keep watching and learning about what you do?
So I will tell you a little bit about COP, but I will say I got a little bit of a break outside of Rutgers University when I first graduated, and I went to Iowa to work for a woman who was running for Congress in 1980. And wasn't she was a Democrat. It wasn't a very good year for Democrats, and
Yeah.
she lost. And I came back to the center,
Okay.
but it was a transformative experience for me to leave the Northeast and go to the Midwest and really work with a woman who was a county supervisor who then went on to run for Congress. Unfortunately, unsuccessfully, but she had a good political career after that as vice chair of the DNC. Her name was Lynn Cutler.
Lynn was amazing.
Yes,
Iowa
yes,
3, if I remember, but
yes,
yes,
absolutely.
great role model.
So the center has been around since 1971, and we are really the premier research, university-based research center that explores and examines women's relationship to American politics. We work to empower women who are in office. We do programmatic work to encourage more women to participate in the political process. And we study the women who are serving. We study women who are candidates. We are the keepers of the data on women office holders, women candidates, women as voters, and now most recently women as donors. And so we are the go-to source for the data, but also for the long view analysis of what the data means and exploring questions like um, do women get into elective office in following different paths than men?
Mm.
How do women really achieve political power? And how can we change that definition so that we see more women in power?
So let's start with some data. There are currently 13 women who are governors, uh, 8 Democrats and 5 Republicans. We have 26 US senators, 16 Democrats, 10 Republicans, starting with Maryland's own Barbara Mikulski, elected in 1986, 125 members of the House of Representatives, which is 28.7, 4 members of the Supreme Court, and we will get back to the court, 32.8% state legislators and down. How are we doing?
Well, I think it's important to mark that things are much better than they were when the center was founded in 1971, but also to note that when you go through those numbers, um, women still make up only less than a third
Yep.
of office holders at any of these levels. And so women's voices are not at the table in proportion to their being citizens of this country. And that costs us.
So why should that matter?
Well,
Isn't it just the same? Does it matter if we vote for the woman candidate or the male candidate?
I would never tell somebody to vote for a candidate just because of their gender.
Gender.
But we do know from all the research that, first of all, people, men and women, bring different life experiences to the table, and
Mhm.
that different experience shapes the policy priorities that they have, and it shapes their attitudes about governance. We know that not only are women who serve in office more likely to prioritize issues affecting women, families, children, education, but they are also more likely to try to figure out ways to work across the aisle and to be more inclusive in the way that they lead. And so it matters both substantively, but it also matters symbolically. It matters for young people, kids, boys and girls, to see women leading side by side with men.
So you're taking me off my order, but in such a good way. So one of the many wonderful things that COP has done is send books
Our book.
to elected officials. And I have to point up Grace for President. Grace goes to Washington, and I'm going to save the third one for a little later.
Okay.
But little Grace wants to be president of the United States, and we go through the Electoral College. We go through it in a thoughtful, accurate, fact-filled way that is so uplifting and so joyous. So role modeling, seeing people who look like me, look like us talk about the importance of that and frankly, the impact of these books.
Yeah, well, we love that project. I'm so happy, Cheryl, that you brought that up. We send a book every year to every elected woman from the state legislative level up. We ask her to take that book to a school in their district and read it to a classroom of girls and boys.
Yes,
Partially for the story itself. And we love Grace for President because it explains the Electoral College, and Grace Goes to Washington explains the voice that you can have as a
yes.
citizen. But also,
As a person, I am cautious about the word citizen. I don't like
okay,
the word
yes,
citizen.
as a person,
As a person, as a human
right?
being.
As
Yes,
a human being in this country, you have
yes,
a way to have a voice. But the other thing that I love about this is it gets women like you, elected women, in front of kids, not necessarily talking about why it's important for there to be more women, but just modeling
yes,
what a leader looks like. And it
yes.
helps little girls and little boys grow up thinking that leaders look like their mothers as well as their fathers.
Yep.
And it's that classic expression, you can't be what you can't see. And if we don't show kids that leaders can look like you,
Yeah.
um, then, they can't imagine that for themselves.
So let's talk about a heartbreak for a second. We had a Black woman as vice president of the United States and as the Democratic nominee. Tell me about the impact of Kamala Harris, her service, her leadership, and her defeat on young girls and women.
That I just So, progress for women in politics has been slow. There's no question about that. And that race, and the race in 2016 was very tough for women who really thought this was the moment. We were going to see a woman reach that highest level.
Yes.
And I
And
do,
just to remind folks, 2016 was Hillary Rodham Clinton against Donald Trump.
yes. And I think that there were a lot of factors that went into the Kamala Harris defeat. Um,
And I'm
Not
not looking to analyze the race, just
right.
as a role model thing. What does that mean, you think?
Well, I think for young women, and particularly young women of color, to see a woman attaining the second highest level of office in the country,
Mm-hmm.
probably the second highest office in the world,
Mm-hmm.
is incredibly powerful. And so, even in the defeat, to see her become the nominee, to see her as the first woman of color to be the nominee of a major political party is
Yes.
enormously important. And frankly, to see her face the defeat that she faced with the
Hmm.
grace that she
Hmm.
faced it with
Hmm. Agreed.
is also an incredibly important role model, that you don't give up, that this
Yes.
is one step in a process. And I think it's important, not just for young women and for all of us,
Yes.
to be reminded of that.
Yes.
This is a process, and there will be these defeats, but
And
it's
there will be more
and there
opportunities.
will be more opportunities, and she was a role model.
Debbie, tell me what you think are the biggest impediments to women running now.
Well, I think that one of the things that getting women to run may be a little bit harder, as we see the rise of violence against elected officials and political people and political candidates.
Yes.
Clearly, what happened in Minnesota, the horrific shooting and assassination of a
The
woman,
former Speaker of the
yeah,
House.
former speaker, woman legislator in Minnesota, and her husband,
Yes.
and the shooting of two, her colleague in the legislature at his
Hmm.
home and his wife.
Hmm.
This, these have a chilling effect.
Yes.
And we do know that women are more likely to face that kind of threat. Some of it is, online, but we've seen,
Gabby
we saw
Giffords,
what
former
happened to Gabby
congressman
Giffords,
woman.
but we also saw the kidnapping threat to the Governor
Yes.
Whitmer of
Michigan.
Michigan.
Hmm.
These incidents have a chilling effect. But we do know that women are still running.
Yes.
But it gives one pause.
So there's so many aspects to deciding to run, but once a woman decides to run, there's still challenges. I have to give a shout out to Chris Yonke. Um,
Yes.
the late Chris Yonke, who was such a teacher to so many of us about how to take credit for our accomplishments, about how to frame the issues, about how to speak clearly, concisely, effectively. So that's something that a lot of women who can be modest, humble, oh, I'm just a PTA mom,
Yeah.
I'm just a volunteer. Two phrases that make me crazy. Talk about that, how women's voices are out there or not.
Well, that's such an interesting point, Cheryl, because we know that women, when they run for office, when men run, they're assumed to be qualified. And
Yes.
women have to prove their qualifications
Hmm.
over and over again. And for so many women, they are not, spotlight seekers in that
Hmm.
same way.
Hmm.
And they share the credit. Um,
Yes.
and the problem is, when you share the credit, then people think, well, she didn't really do that.
Right.
It was this team of people. Whereas men are much more comfortable, and they should do it this way. I mean, they should just assert, I did this.
Yes.
Women are
So,
more likely to need outside folks saying, Cheryl Kagan, she's great, she did this, but from another person saying it
yes.
about them.
So I have to tell you a quick story. And again, I'm going to try not to cry, but when I was running for re-election to the House, I was first elected in a 10-way race in 1994. So it was 1998. I was asking the voters for another 4-year contract, a renewal of my contract. And she was taping me, videotaping me, and she asked about my accomplishments. And I said, well, we did this and we did this and we passed this law. And she interrupted me and she said, who's we? Whose bill was it? I was like, well, it was my bill. She said, well, why are you saying we? I was like, well, everyone had to vote for it and all that. And she really called me on needing to take credit. And it was my bill. And I came up with the idea and I passed it. And so, yeah, too true. Let's go to fundraising. Traditionally, women are scared to ask for money. Debbie Walsh, can you donate $250, $100, $20 to my campaign to help me do the things that we all care about? Why is that so hard for women and has it gotten better?
Well, here's the deal. We know that when women run for office, they raise comparable amounts of money to men in comparable races.
Hmm,
So it's not that women aren't capable and aren't doing it.
right?
It may be emotionally harder. Now, I would venture to say nobody likes asking other people for money, women or men.
Hmm,
The difference may well be that the circles that women are traveling in are not as moneyed as the circles
hmm.
that their male colleagues are traveling in. So they are
With
more
lots of
likely,
exceptions. I mean,
yeah,
Carly Fiorina,
absolutely,
former
but those are
Yeah,
the exceptions.
right.
By and large, what we see is that women, and we've done quite a bit of research recently on the whole issue of fundraising and donors, that women are more dependent on those small dollar gifts.
Yes,
So if they're raising comparable amounts of money, but they're doing it in smaller dollars, it's a lot more work.
sure.
A man running for office can make one phone call to raise $1,000, and
Right,
a woman is making 10 phone calls to
right,
raise that much money.
right.
So it is a challenge, but I want to say it's a challenge. It's not an obstacle because
Yeah,
we know women are doing it.
good. Um, so again, I have so many more questions here. Let's talk about lesbians, LGBTQ, women of color, women with disabilities. What extra challenges do they have? Are they diminishing or not as impediments or hurdles?
Well, look, I think there's always, women bring a lot of different identities to the table,
Hmm.
and you cannot make one sweeping statement about the challenges that women overall face.
Hmm.
Um, we know, for instance, when we think about women of color in particular,
Hmm.
there has been this conventional wisdom that women of color can only win in districts that are what are called majority minority districts.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's not true. That we are seeing more and more examples of women, Black women winning, Latino women winning in places that are not majority Black or majority Latino. And so that conventional wisdom can really get in the way, particularly for those women to run for statewide office,
Yes.
because the parties and the fundraisers and the consultants all say, oh, well, they can't win. So we
Hmm.
point to women like Lauren Underwood, and happily we point to women like
All right,
Virginia
define who Lauren Underwood is, please.
Lauren Underwood, Congresswoman from Illinois,
Thank
a
you.
Black woman who represents not a majority minority
Hmm.
district.
Hmm.
And now, happily, your senator from Maryland
Angela Alsabrooks.
and Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester
Right.
from Delaware,
Delaware.
who are now, for the very first time in history, two Black women serving
Mhm.
simultaneously in
Yes.
the United States Senate, which is ridiculous that it's taken till now for that
Yes.
to happen. But a great example of Black women running statewide and
Hmm.
winning.
And winning.
But I
Hmm.
will point out that we have yet to elect a Black woman governor
Hmm.
in this country.
Hmm.
So there are still hills to climb.
So let's talk about some of the enormous challenges. I have in my notes the reference to the Me Too movement and sexual harassment. Pay equity is still a challenge. The Dobbs decision, removing our right in many, many states to control our reproductive freedom. We have Donald Trump rolling back so many things, so many rights. Talk about the current climate and how that changes what COP does, if at all.
Yeah, well, the current climate is complicated and it's complex, particularly we sit at a university. Universities, higher education is clearly under fire.
Yes.
We see what's happening right now with the Trump administration and its requests and demands of Harvard and of Penn and of Columbia. And
Hmm.
w- there are certainly grants and that have been cut, some at
Hmm.
our university as well,
Hmm. Again,
particularly
that's Rutgers University,
Rutgers
New Jersey.
University
Hmm.
around centers that are doing work around gender and violence. There's huge pressure around any issues related to trans rights and trans healthcare.
Mhm.
We have a big medical school. So the universities are under fire, and our work is exactly the kind of work that gets called DEI,
Yeah.
and then
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
absolutely, and that is what that is being targeted. And
Yes.
so I will tell you that right now we are just doing the work we're doing
Mhm.
because we have to.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, it's critically important. And we hope that our supporters, are the folks that make major gifts and grants to us, will stand by our side and keep supporting us in the face of what's going on. Because if we don't have the data, and data seems to be a very scary thing in this administration.
Yes. Facts.
We see data disappearing off of federal websites,
Mm.
and we want to make sure that our data gets collected and we keep collecting it because, you can't identify a problem if you don't have the data to back it up. So if you just get rid of the data, maybe the problem won't be so visible, right?
So let's do the reality that COP is bipartisan. How much more challenging? What if a woman wants to run for office and she is anti-choice, anti-reproductive freedom, anti-gay rights, who knows, climate change? What does COP still open the doors? Still provide her
Well,
with training?
Well, here's our trainings that we do in New Jersey, and we have partnerships around the country, are nonpartisan. So
Yes.
yes, she would be welcome at any of our trainings.
Mm-hmm.
We are bipartisan or nonpartisan, but more
Mm-hmm.
and more we are defining ourselves as pro-democracy. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can have different views on different issues, but you have to believe in those democratic institutions because
Yes.
we are about
Little d, democracy,
little
democratic.
d democracy, and
Mm-hmm.
we are about those democratic institutions and
Mm-hmm.
preserving them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of organizations that have been, and a long history of being bipartisan, nonpartisan, are taking this approach in this moment.
Yes.
And I think it's critically important. But here's the reality. We we study and we analyze, and we report what we believe to be the facts and the truth.
Yes.
And so when we look at the numbers, for instance, right now, women are doing quite well in the Democratic Party. The
Mm-hmm.
party that has really been the biggest challenge for women is the Republican Party. Women are almost 50% or are 50% or more of Democratic caucuses in over half of the state legislatures
Mm-hmm.
around the country. Um, y'all are doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the Republican Party, really, by not prioritizing women's leadership, not believing that there is a difference that women bring to the table and that it matters to have that diversity, it is hurting them when it comes to women's representation.
I do want to give a shout out to former U.S. Senator Nancy Landon Kassenbaum and former Senator and Cabinet Secretary Liddy Dole and
And your
Sandra Day
former
O'Connor,
Congresswoman from Maryland, Connie Morella.
Connie Morella. So I want to pivot to the third branch of government as we were talking about democracy. I'm holding up a button for those who are listening on Spotify uh, or elsewhere here, or iPod. I'm forgetting the name. Anyway, vote to fix the court. And the third book that you sent is I Dissent, which features Ruth Bader Ginsburg and talks about the court. We have four women of the nine on the Supreme Court, and yet the court has not been female friendly. Talk briefly about that because then I just have a couple things and we need to wrap up.
Sure. Well, I always loved Ruth Bader Ginsburg's line about, when will we have enough women on
Okay.
the court? And she said, when there are nine women serving the
Right.
court. Look, I think what we see in the courts is that we need women's representation in every branch of government
Yep.
and at every level, again, bringing their experience to the table.
Mhm.
And the court has an enormous impact on all of our lives. It's a hard message for voters in many ways. It's kind of abstract
Hmm.
to make the connection between what the Supreme Court does and their day-to-day life. But I'll tell you something. Let me tell you a quick story, Cheryl. I will tell you that I think part of this has to do with civic education in this country, and we don't teach people about the branches of government and what they do. Because right after the Dobbs decision, I heard young women saying, "Why didn't Joe Biden stop this?"
Uh,
This 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 decision had been leaked, and he could have done
mhm,
something about
mhm.
it. And there's not an understanding of how our system works,
Sure,
and we need to teach that.
sure, sure. Um, I'm going to totally pivot us briefly. Um, those who watch regularly or listen on Apple Podcasts or now Spotify know that I am proudly a word nerd and a grammar geek. So words matter. The word feminist, bitchy, bossy, ambitious. When do those words either become extinct or not controversial or gender neutral? Will you just speak about language?
Yeah, language matters. You're
Mhm.
absolutely right. And words get used and they are weaponized. The word feminist has been
Yep.
weaponized, a word that should not be a weapon. It should
Hmm.
be something that, frankly, I embrace, you embrace.
Hmm.
I hope more and more people do embrace. I do think there are some generational differences. I think for young women, they don't necessarily think about these issues in quite the same way. Although I do think that post Dobbs,
Yes,
may be thinking about some of these
yes,
differently. I think they are seeing that government has an impact on their lives, and if they don't stand up for these things, it's a problem.
yes, yeah. Last question, then we'll go to our fast five. You have been at CAWP for more than 40 years. Bless you for that. What keeps you motivated and inspired? And tell us really quickly what some of your visions or goals might be for the coming years.
So, what keeps me inspired and keeps me going, frankly, are the women across the country like you who are serving in office and making
Mm.
a difference. And it means that our work needs to continue. We need to figure out ways to make sure there are more of you. We need to study you and understand how you work and what are the challenges and what
Mm.
are the things that could make life better for women who serve in public office. So that's really what inspires me and our students. I have to say,
Mhm.
the students that we work with are programs for young women. When I see them come in sort of nervous and anxious and not sure they can do it, and after they spend a week with us in part of our new leadership program, which is a national public leadership education program that opens doors to thinking about life in politics
Love
and
it.
government. They leave inspired. We just got a wonderful email from a young woman who wrote me. She had been in our program this summer, said, I just got this incredible internship in the governor's office. And if I hadn't done your program, I wouldn't have done it. I was
Nice.
shy. I was afraid
Nice.
to speak up. And now here she is. She's going to be an intern in Trenton. And
I
so
love it.
those are the stories that keep me going. And my vision for the future is to keep our programs running and going, continuing to do the work and the analysis and the data collection, but also to secure our financial future. So I, like all the elected women around the country who have to ask for money, I continue to do that as well,
Yes.
to
Yes.
build an endowment for the center so we are financially secure.
Good. Well, Debbie Walsh, it is time for the fast five.
Okay, I'm a
Five,
little nervous about this.
five quick questions, five really quick answers. First, question number one. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
uh, Take risks. And when you threaten something, you have to really be willing to follow through on it.
Nice. Question two. If you had 1 hour extra each day of free time, how would you use it?
Well, if I wasn't using it for work, which I shouldn't, it would either be spending it with my grandchildren or knitting.
Okay. Question three. Who is your biggest shero of all time?
So I'm going to say something that will make me start to cry a little bit, which
Okay.
was Ruth
I
Mandel,
knew
who
you were going to
was
say
the
Ruth
founding
Mandel.
director of the center, who I
Yeah.
worked with for decades, who we
Yes.
sadly lost a few years ago.
Mhm.
And she was my absolute hero and my mentor and my role model.
She was amazing. Thank you. Question number four. What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done, and would you do it again?
You know, in a funny way, my going out to Iowa was the most adventurous thing when I think about it. I grew up in New York City. I didn't know how to drive. I got a job as the driver of the candidate. I said yes to the job.
Wow.
They did not know I did not know how to drive at that time. I learned to drive in about 4 weeks and went out there and just started doing it. It was a completely different world. It was like my study abroad program, but right in the middle of the country, and I loved every minute of it.
Love it.
But it felt at the time like a huge risk, and but it was wonderful.
Nice. And question five. The question that I ask everybody, Debbie Walsh, Director of the Center for American Women in Politics. What is your hidden secret superpower? What's a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
My gosh, Cheryl, you need to give these questions ahead of time. Um,
They're on all of my other
I know
podcasts, Marilyn.
I should have gone back and listened to all the five fast questions. Uh, I would say it is my the way I connect to people. Um, and I think other people can do it too, but I really enjoy people and it's genuine. And
Nice.
I hope that comes through with folks. And it has made it possible to stay doing this work for so long because, as you know, this is all about relationships. And
Hmm.
for me, these relationships are very sincere and very real.
I love it. Well, Debbie Walsh, thank you for all you do. Thanks for all you have done for more than 40 years, and to CAWP for all it's done for more than 50 years. You have inspired and guided and trained so many of us. So thank you for taking the time to kibitz today. Good to see you.
Cheryl, thank you for including me in your kibitz.
Absolutely. See you soon, I hope.
Bye bye.